Hi, and welcome to Dream Interpretation Coach. My name is Paula Bridges, and I talk about dreams. In this series, I host an informal discussion between Billy McKee and Dr. Barbara Condron regarding dreams during our Om Chanting Challenge. In part 12, Billy dreamed of his father-in-law. Now, in the next dream, he has his grandma in the dream, both superconscious aspects. So, stay tuned.
All right, so in this dream, I was with family and we were traveling down a river in a motorboat. There was about 6 of us in a boat. And when I say that I was with family, I can't tell you who the family members were. I just knew that they were family, okay? I don't even know who was driving the boat. I was riding in it towards the back. Like I said, there was about 6 of us in it. But my grandma McKee, my paternal grandmother, she was there and she was a focus. And she's been deceased for about 30 years now. And again, just like Paula's dad, I'm positive she's never been in one of my dreams. Okay.
So let's stop there for just a second, because you've just pointed out a very significant part of what's going on in your consciousness, where you in the first dream you had the masculine, the dynamic part, the yang part, if you will, of superconscious mind as the other character in that dream. So there's something going on in your consciousness, which I do see is linked to Om. And the next, we had to say this, that, in some ways it's almost foreshadowing, because the next day, day 20, is about duality. That's what it's called. And so it is that yin and yang. So in some ways you're kind of preparing for that. And then in this dream, your grandma is the feminine superconscious. So you've got both qualities between the two dreams in the same night. You've got both qualities, and each having their own area of arena of influence. Your father-in-law has that one, it's his dream. And then this one is your grandma's dream. And then there's also the movement of what you talked about with the first dream of being in control of your truck, being in control of your body. And in this dream, you're not in control of the vehicle. And that really isn't important. It's just significant difference, because the feminine, which is your grandma, is the yin. And the yin is the field itself. It's not the action moving and penetrating the field. It's the field itself. And so there's a difference in that. So that kind of neutralizes the right or wrong of whether you're in control of the vehicle or not. Because when you're dealing with feminine energies, receptive yin energies, that control factor like that doesn't enter into it.
Play into it.
No, because it's everything. It already is everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next, what grandma does is she stands up while the boat is moving down the river, and to everyone's surprise, she jumps up and does a beautiful head first dive right into the river while the boat is moving. All right. And then I jumped in after her to make sure she was okay. And then the scene changes after that.
Okay, let me ask you a question. I know that this is several days ago now, but that image of her diving into the water, and you talked about water being a symbol often in your dreams, so that's conscious life experience. So that feminine yin entering into the life experiences, I have to ask you about well, maybe just to speak to your experiences with Om as you're sounding it. Have there been things in this last week that you either noticed a difference or a depth or an epiphany about something? How would that relate to this?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't, nothing. Matter of fact, I haven't written anything in my journal in the last week because nothing has really come up while I'm practicing the Om. Again, I'm still experimenting, not experimenting, just I honor it by making sure that I'm in a relatively quiet place where I can be present with it. Okay.
Mhm.
But like several times this particular week, it was nice weather outside. I laid in the hammock in the backyard with my feet placed firmly on the ground. All right. However, we're just underneath the flight path. So, and in the afternoon when I was doing it, there's 2 runways, that are landing on both sides of the house.
Wow.
So every 7 minutes or so, while I'm doing the challenge, there's large planes flying overhead. But still, I like being outside,
Mhm.
and I like having bare feet on the ground. But I've played around with it. I've done it early in the morning. I've done it late at night, which is not that often. I usually want to get it done before that. Many times I've done the reading in the morning and then the actual oming in the afternoon. And I think that's what I was doing most of this week. But nothing comes to mind, no revelations or significant moments while I was or shortly thereafter.
We'll see what the rest of the dream says. One thing I might say to you is, one of the things that I've noticed that happened in my own journey, and that I've noticed that happens in most people's journey, is that our conscious imagination can sometimes be an impediment, because we begin to try to consciously anticipate what's going to happen before we even have the experience. And this is a lot of the heart math work in terms of expectation being one of the things that can make us most incoherent between the head and the heart. And it's one of the greatest challenges now for humanity, because the imagination, it's kind of like it's the new Pandora box, and it's open now, and you can see it everywhere. You can see it in every part of our life. Imagination is just like going kind of crazy. And so the more grounded that we can become in being simple, direct, and focused, so that we really take stock of what's going on, first in our bodies. And because of the breathing involved with Om, it's very easy to do that if we will, because the breath does put you into the present moment. When you're putting your full attention on breath, you're not thinking about anything else. So it's an invitation to go inward consciously. So that's what I would encourage you to focus on, is what's going on with your body. How do you feel before? How do you feel after?
I will say this, that 2 things I've noticed in the last week is that any mental challenge, any hey, something's come up, we need to figure this out, I've really easily navigated it. Like, oh, this is the way this can go down, and it's worked perfectly. I mean, there's almost been no thought about it. And there has been, now I've been sitting here thinking, there has been several times where after my oming was done and I'm sitting there in present moment and quiet, it was not with any expectation or anything. It was like I was almost going to get an epiphany or almost going to get a download. Like it was just right there, and I'm going, and then nothing happens. So I just get up and walk off then.
Yeah.
But that's just an observation. I need to put that in my diary. I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. The keenness of attention, so that you don't take anything for granted, is so much a part of the inner journey and the integration work. To drop the second guessing, to drop the judgmentalism that we're all prone to, and really neutralize the thinking, so that you give yourself free space. And then you just watch. This is where the attitude of a child comes in, not childish, but childlike. And that's why really wise people many times are like children. I noticed this when I was with the Dalai Lama, and that was part of the attraction for me with the Dalai Lama, was that he has such a playful nature, and is so, for all that he's seen and all that he's endured and all that his people have endured, he has not spoiled that childlike openness to life and what it means and how to interpret it. And that to me is what the dream work is all about. That's what the dream work can give any of us. So what you just described comes in the next part of the dream with swimming. It's you know, when we're swimming and you're a good swimmer and you swim well in the dream, and you're even training. So, you know, that means that you really are navigating life well. It's what you just said in terms of, it seems like, you know, you're whatever's going down, you know exactly what needs to happen, that kind of thing. So let's go on with the dream and see how that's being fed back from your subconscious mind.
Yeah. So after I jumped in to see if grandma was okay, she wasn't there anymore. And the next scene comes up is I'm swimming downstream, about 6 to 8 other people whom I don't know. Again, there's one other dream, maybe 2 other dreams in the last couple of weeks where I've been swimming with 6 to 8 other people. You know, I don't know if it's the same folks, but I was behind the group but I put in here that I've been training more of my swimming lately, and I knew I could pass them. I did so. So I was swimming with dexterity, you know, more so than I do in real life. I was swimming beautifully. maybe that'll help me. I know it can. So I swam between them. And just before I got through all of them, I decided to help out another male who was unknown. And I tethered, next thing I know, we're tethered to each other. And I'm helping him swim. And we get to the end of the swim, and I don't know any other way to explain this except it's like the water went into an underground cave, but it wasn't really a cave. It was open on the other side. You had turnstiles, you had lines, you had people getting out, getting into the lines. And it was an exit, but it was underground. There were stairs leading up to the surface. And this scene ends with me, the stairs are about 1.5 stories high. And with me still tethered to him, we go running up the stairs. Okay. And I could hear others in the group that had gotten out of the water behind us. I could hear them running up the stairs behind us too. And now it's like I'm in a race. I'm determined to make it to the top before they do. And we do make it to the top before anybody else in that group did.
So you got the attitude, the amusement ride mixed in with what looked like reality, and you've got the depth. It looks like, you know, swimming and going underground and that kind of imagery. And in the first dream, you had mud too, which is kind of important. But we
didn't get into that part. But yes, the
yeah.
driveway I pulled into turned muddy, and then I turned around and moved, came out. Yeah.
Yeah. So the imagery is scenery. So it's the setting of the dream that becomes important at this point. And so part of it's like the game of life, because it's like an amusement game. The stairways are talking about movement between levels of consciousness. The water and swimming is talking about conscious life experiences. So you're talking about the conscious mind and what it's doing. And then you've got the underground, which is subconscious mind. So you've got action going on that you're taking the lead for. You know, you're the one, even though all these aspects are unknown, except for, you know, grandma, but she's gone now. And you've got this 30-year-old man, which is a conscious aspect of you that's unfamiliar. So you're becoming more aware of something within yourself that is conscious and that is tethered. It's interesting that you say tethered. Is tethered in to you and in the dream. Is that a positive thing, or is it a drawback?
No, it was positive, because I had looked into many years ago when I started doing triathlons. I looked into leading a blind person through a race, and the only way you can do that is be tethered to them.
Wow.
So is that what it's through the run? On the bike, you're on a tandem bike, so you're not tethered. But through the swim and the run, you are tethered. to each other.
Okay, so see, this is very important in terms of context for the dreamer, because I would not have had that context because my experience doesn't include that, but yours does. So that's why your subconscious mind painted the dream that way. That's a really important message for people to get who want to learn to interpret their dreams.
Because it could be something totally different to someone else. They could
it would be
feel like it's an anchor or something holding them back or whatever. But for me, it wasn't. Yeah,
exactly. So we have universal symbols, which means that this unknown, younger aspect of you want to lead, you want to do something with that now. But the fact that how it got done in the dream tells you another depth to it. And what you just said was the way you got into that was through if you worked with a blind person, which is so remarkable. Even though the guy wasn't blind in the dream, you have that association with the tethering. So there's something that you are actively wanting to see now that you didn't see when you were younger. You couldn't see it. Yeah. That's the wisdom in life, is that, and that's part of us neutralizing our judgments, our self-judgments, self-criticism, all that stuff, dropping all that stuff, and really learning how to reason and discern so that we can get the most out of our life. So this dream at this part particularly is really highlighting that for you, which is wonderful. It's like, I can only encourage you to really identify what that aspect of yourself is, and maybe the rest of the dream helps. Let's go on.
Okay.
Let's find out.
So we get to the top, and we're outside, and I look to where our exit is, and there's a checkpoint. It's like an immigration checkpoint. I try to get around it, so we run over a small hill. I'm still with the guy tethered. We run over a small hill, and there's a fence, a very tall security fence with barbed wire on the top, running down the property towards the immigration checkpoint. And we run down the fence line to see if there's a way to get around it, but there's not. So then I figured out that I could get back underground and get past the checkpoint. Now, I made a note here that the whole reason of me getting around the checkpoint didn't seem to be I didn't seem to have any anxiety about the checkpoint per se. It seemed more about, I didn't want to spend time waiting in line.
Okay, so what I see in that immediately is that it's not really an authority issue for you. It's a time issue again. Right. And if you'll go back to that first dream you had with your father-in-law, are you in a hurry?
Right.
So that's the theme. And I think it's the theme through that night is all about who's in a hurry. It's like you're the one that's in a hurry at this point in the dream, that you don't want to line up like that. You want the freedom to move the way you want to move when you want to move. Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting thing to reflect upon.
So I get out to the other side. I'm not tethered to the unknown male any longer. And I get on a tramway, again, like Disney World tramway or something, an amusement park tramway. And I get in a car and sit on a bench seat next to a lady and her family. She was the grandmother of the family and in her 80s. She saw my iPad, which I now had with me, and she was admiring it, saying that she had never used one or even touched one, but was thinking about getting one for herself and wondered how I liked it. I told her I really liked it, that it was an iPad Air version and very lightweight. I said, "Here, take it and see what you think." And she was amazed at how light it was.
Okay.
Then she started playing around with it. And she went to the photo app and she opened it up. And the first picture she clicked on was of my grandmother McKee, my grandma McKee, jumping off the boat into the river. So, and it was a live photo, so she could hold on it and see the action. Okay. And then the rest of her family came around and they all started looking at the pictures. And they went through the pictures. It was like the whole scene of my grandmother jumping in, me jumping in after her, me swimming with the group. The whole event was captured on the photos in live action, and they were going through them, looking at it. And that's the end of the dream.
So the real key there is the photos, and particularly digital photos. So you're talking about the brain memory. And so there's a movement that I see there, Billy, that is from it's how the pattern in the superconscious mind, which you spoke about a moment ago, how the pattern in superconscious mind is always what we're striving for. It's the reason why we're here. And so part of that pattern is expressed through physical DNA. Part of it is through spiritual DNA too. And that's what the superconscious, it's consciousness. It's not just the physicality, but it's actually the intelligence is moving through us. And what's really interesting that I would dip into if it's my dream is, what is the difference between my grandma and then this grandma that I don't know? I mean, what is that receptivity that's going on there that is being contrasted? And the contrast comes through in the imagery with her fascination with the technology, with the digital memory, and with the pictures of your real grandma, right? But there's a disconnect there that's not a bad disconnect. So don't judge that word badly. It's that there's a difference between being totally objective and unconscious and being aware. There's also a difference because your grandmother is no longer alive. She's been gone for 30 years. That's a long time. So there's also that time element again that's coming into these dreams. It's like that's another thing I would really focus on is in terms of where my attention is. Is my attention in the past, like with grandma, your own grandma, or is it in the present with this unknown grandma in the dream, or with your father-in-law? There's not a whole lot of future going on here. Most of it is looking at what was before, and even the 30-year-old young man that you don't know, but you are helping him. That in one way you're tethered, and it's like you are bound to determine that you're going to lead him into something in life.
What would the symbol of a tram be? Because it's a vehicle for moving a lot of people at one time. It's not like I walked up to them on the street. They were actually sitting on like the last car of the tram, and I got on it with them. And again, it was a family situation too. So it wasn't just a grandmother, it was her family.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So it's a whole consciousness. Both of us study gene keys, and a great deal of gene keys is working with physical DNA and ancestral thinking, motivations, the need to understand our roots, where we come from, and what our compulsions are, and to evolve those. And the reality that as we heal, then our entire bloodline heals. And the reason for that, it's not so much that we change the past, because you can't do that. You can only change how you see the past. And so in that, you begin to own the reality that as we change, then our influence with the generations now that are birthing, whether we're as grandparents, and our influence on the grandkids, or if we're actually parents who have changed our DNA and we're having offspring. There's a whole world there that's opening up to all of us in terms of us understanding what it means to be a human being, what the future human being is right now, and how much really it's wonderful to me, how much hope, how much expectation, how much evolutionary development we are capable of right now. That has nothing to do with external factors of, genetical manipulation, things like that. That's certainly an avenue, but I don't think it's necessary. I think that we have everything we need inside of us to make all of the adjustments, changes, additions, evolutionary leaps, all of that. because I've lived it in my own life, and I've seen other people do the same thing in miraculous healing. So, there's a lot of the quality to this, because the amusement park, the tram that you were talking about, the family, all of that is, I think, somewhat in the dream. And it, in some ways, perhaps is unconscious right now, but it's starting to surface, literally. And you're starting to weigh it in terms of, how does this picture of your grandma, McKay, is that her name?
McKee.
McKee. Okay. And how does that measure up with this grandma and her family that you don't know? It's like, what is the resonance there? How do they belong together? And how do you work that all the way through your brain so that you really get the message and it makes the changes in the body? And Om, the whole Om challenge is about moving the self into realizing that once you go into Om and you get beyond the physicality of it, all the different levels of the, wondering what you're doing, if it's working, all that kind of busy brain stuff, and you start moving into the realm of hearing the Om inside, so that it becomes a mantra. And when it becomes a mantra inside you, then that's the next open door to the silence. And once you get to the silence, then you begin to understand the difference between the mind and the brain. The brain is of the body, the mind is with the soul. And so it's this whole transition journey that's just really beautiful. And it is a healing journey in itself, without having to think about healing or think about something that's wrong. So I think this is a dream that you probably will have dreams in the future, later in the Om challenge, that probably echo this one or in some way relate to it. It'll be exciting for us to see.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is exciting to me. So.
Me too.
Now, stay tuned for part 14, when we learn how humility plays a part in Billy's dream.